Hello, and welcome back to Skep's Unnamed Deck Showcase. Today on the channel, I wanted to take a look back into the Deep Emotion box and have a look at a premier combo deck that debuted in the same time as Altergeist, Live Twin, Magikey, and Neos Ubel, as well as, of course, the new Blue Eyes support. Despite not seeing a ton of success, this deck has a fantastic linear strategy that is excellent for new players to try out due to its low cost of investment, only needing 3 main SRs and 1 additional SR from the same box, and requiring no advanced player skill to pilot because the entire deck plays itself for you. Presenting Training Wheels Turbo, Cyber's Clock Dragon. So here we are with the deck, and if you're turned off by the high amount of URs in this deck, despite me saying it was an ideal deck for free-to-play players, don't worry, because you don't have to play like half these cards. They're just staples that are concessions to the format, and you can play anything else instead of them. It might not be as optimal, but it is fine enough because the skill plays the deck for you. The cards you're playing are much less important than the yellow button you're clicking. Speaking of, let's take a look at the only reason this deck works in any capacity: Fusion Clockup, our training wheels of choice. Each of the following effects can be used once per duel. During the duel you use this skill, you cannot special summon monsters except Dragon-type fusion monsters and Cybers-type monsters. You can only special summon Dark or Wind monsters from your graveyard. This is an incredibly important line of text, which means it is impossible for you to play around DD Crow by preserving your Clock Wyvern on the field. You must link off Clock Wyvern for Proxy F Magician with your Stack Reviver if you want to special summon something. Skills like this are incredibly infuriating because they limit the amount of skill expression players can use when piloting the deck. Experienced players will know it's important to preserve their Clock Wyvern on field by not linking it off, but you can't do that if you want to use the skill, so it is impossible to actually play around DD Crow in this deck. You will lose to it if they DD Crow your Wyvern. If you have Cyber's Clock Dragon in your extra deck, return 1 Cynet Fusion or Cybers type monster from your hand to the deck and add 1 Clock Wyvern and 1 Cynet Fusion to your hand. Change 1 normal monster, including a token, in your main monster zone to Stack Reviver, and finally change the type and attribute of 2 monsters on your field to Dragon type and Dark attribute, then send 1 Decode Talker from outside your deck to the graveyard. Important to mention that you can special summon this Decode Talker later in the duel, even though it wasn't properly special summoned because skills are fucking stupid. Incredible that they actually introduced the skill effects in the same order you're going to activate them. This is just an instruction manual for how you should play your duels, and as a result, this deck takes very little skill to pilot. All you have to know is to click skill number 1, skill number 2, and skill number 3 to win your games. Very excellent for new players because you don't need to know how your cards work. Speaking of, let's talk about the least important part of our deck, the cards we're playing in our deck of cards. We're playing 3 copies of Clock Wyvern and 2 copies of Cynet Fusion as our skill tax. Important to note, you have to have your Cynet Fusion and Clock Wyvern at least 1 copy apiece in your deck in order to activate the first part of the skill, which is why we're playing 2, because if you draw 1 copy of Cynet Fusion and you're only playing 1, you cannot access the first part of your skill, which is very unfortunate. You could go up to 3, but I think that's bad. And you could also go down to 1 if you don't fear God, but every time you draw your Cynet Fusion, you'll probably lose the game if you do that. This way, you only lose the game when you draw 2 Cynet Fusions, and what are the chances of that happening? For our Cybers extenders, we're playing the best one, Linkslayer, at 3, unfortunately. While it is optimal to play 3 copies of this, you can also get away with 1 or 0. This is just Twin Twister on legs, and since your entire combo is generated off of your Clock Wyvern and your skill, you can just discard the other 2 cards in your hand to pop back row before committing to your Clock Wyvern normal and executing your combo. Important to note that your Cynet Fusion is recyclable off of your main combo, so you can also just discard Cynet Fusion and get it back later in the turn 2 pop back row going second. Very strong card. I would not recommend any Cybers extender at 3 copies over Linkslayer unless you do not own Linkslayer at 3 copies. Speaking of, the next best Cybers extender, Backup Secretary. You summon it if you have a Cybers, and the 3rd best extender, Cybers Converter, because it is an effect monster that summons itself if all monsters you control are Cybers type monsters. These are strictly better than our last extender, D-Grade Buster, because they do not require graveyard setup. To summon D-Grade Buster from your hand, you must banish 2 Cybers monsters, which normally means you have to execute some part of your combo uninterrupted in order to generate those cards in your graveyard. D-Grade Buster, nonetheless, is still a great finisher card if for some reason you aren't able to make it to the battle phase with a Clock Dragon or Borreload Furious Dragon, so I would still recommend it at 1 copy. It is also a Cybers monster you can return to your deck to access your combo. On to the staples. These are all ultra rares that you can sub out for other less good cards. Staples are ideally not what should be winning your matches, so if you have any way at all to play like 3 additional Cybers extenders with this core of cards, this core of cards right here, you're probably going to be fine if even if you're not playing the ideal staple ratios. Speaking of, we are playing 2 copies of Effect Veiler instead of 3 because sometimes Effect Veiler does nothing, 2 copies of DD Crow instead of 3 because sometimes DD Crow does nothing, 2 copies of Crackdown because it's, I think, for this deck that wants to link summon using effect monsters, the best limit 3 trap we can use. You can play Floodgate if you're really worried about going first into Lunalights. That's totally fine for this format as well. You're not incorrect for doing that. And finally, 2 copies of Forbidden Lance because I think just Link Slayer is not enough insulation from back row because you do kind of lose if your Clockwyvern normal summon gets warning pointed or the like. These are the 20 cards I'm playing. I think these are, if not the ideal ratios, close to them. Again, you've got like, what, 8 copies for Tex because your main deck engine is small enough because your skill plays the deck for you that you don't need to run a critical mass of combo pieces. You just need to run a critical mass of cards that turn into your combo pieces, and luckily one of those cards happens to be Twin Twisters. Let's talk about our extra deck. I am playing a lot of one-ofs. This is actually Firewall Dragon, which I would cut for the second duplexer, so I'll just take it out for the purposes of this deck profile. 1 Clock Lizard for the OTK, 1 Talkback Lancer for a reason I'm not quite aware of, 1 Proxy F Magician to fusion summon without Signet Fusion into Borreload Furious or Duplexer, 1 copy of Raster Liger, which I have not yet summoned, 1 copy of Duplexer Chimera, which I would, of course, make 2 copies in the future, 1 copy of Cyber's Clock Dragon to kill your opponent into the sun, and 1 copy of Borreload Furious Dragon. Since the skill is so nice to give it to us for free, we might as well play it. This is our turn 1 end boss, typically alongside a Duplexer Chimera to pop with the Borreload Furious Dragon, which will send Duplexer to the graveyard. That will add Signet Fusion back to your hand to make Cyber's Clock Dragon on turn 3 for the OTK. That is the deck. It is far less important than the skill we're playing, but that's just where Duel Links is right now. The least important part of the deck of cards you play are the cards you play in your deck, after all. So without any further explanation, let's take this incredibly mediocre pile of cards with a busted skill onto ladder and see how it performs on ranked. Alrighty, folks, game number 1 here, going to be up against a Playmaker and I on what is actually probably the best deck for free-to-play and budget players. Tinyi, we're going to be going first from a build where I was still playing one-time passcode. This is going to showcase both why I decided to cut one-time passcode for better extenders, as well as why the skill limits player skill expression, which I will explain as we get to the point in the combo where that comes up. We are going to activate the skill Fusion Clockup, returning Backup Secretary to add Clockwyvern and Signet Fusion. Would have preferred to keep Backup Secretary in hand, which is why I think I ended up cutting one-time passcode for another Cybers type monster to shuffle back instead. We are going to then summon Clockwyvern, activate the effect to summon the token, then activate the skill to change it into Stack Reviver and link off for Proxy F Magician, and now I will explain why the skill is worded in a way that limits player expression. Because you can only special summon Wind and Dark Attribute monsters from the graveyard, had I kept Backup Secretary in hand, I could not have linked off Backup Secretary and Stack Reviver to the graveyard to play around DD Crow, because Stack Reviver cannot summon Backup Secretary under the skill restriction, meaning you have to link off Clockwyvern, meaning at no point in your combo, unless you draw a total of 2 extenders, can you ever play around DD Crow in this deck, which is incredibly frustrating. It would have been a nice way to reward players who actually have a little bit of game knowledge to know to keep their Clockwyvern out of the graveyard as much as possible. But the skill really genuinely does play the deck for you to the point where there is only one possible way to execute the combo while gaining full card advantage, which is, of course, to link off the Clockwyvern and lose to DD Crow. Luckily, my opponent here does not have it, but incredibly frustrating that the skill limits skill expression in such a way. We are going to activate the effect of Stack Reviver, in the graveyard to revive the Wyvern, make our monsters Dark Dragons, then Fusion Summon with Proxy's effect to make Borreload Furious, activate one-time passcode, then activate the Signet Fusion to use the token and Proxy F in graveyard to make Dicksucker Chimera. We're going to set 2 cards and pass, and we're going to see what our opponent can do here. They're going to make Vishutta. We're going to activate Crackdown. I really do not want them to be special summoning monsters or returning my monsters to the hand. We're going to just pop the Vishutta, grab a Clockwyvern for next turn, and Signet Fusion. And we have Lance, which means they have to have a full combo here. They only have a defense position monster and 2 back row, which is fine. We're going to pop our Vishutta and the Crackdown. We're going to Lance in response, even though Crackdown would be destroyed, and I am an idiot. They are going to Warning Point our Wyvern. Would have been nice to be able to Lance that, but I don't know how to read my own card. So we're going to walk over over their monster and hit them in the face with Degrade Buster, they're going to draw Vashetta, which we are sure as shit not going to let survive. We're going to blow it up, and they're going to pass it back to us, and we'll kill them. Round 2 of the Playmaker mirror matches here. We're going to be up against a Playmaker playing what is probably my favorite deck to be piloting in the current format, that being S-Force. They're going to activate Storm Access and only have 6 cards in the extra deck before then, so I don't really know exactly how competent this list is, but we'll see. They are going to allow us to normal summon Clock Wyvern. The effect goes through. We've opened 2 hand traps and our Crackdown. That's insane. We are going to link off for Proxy F Magician. Only one way to do the combo, so stop me if you've seen this before. Reviving the Clock Wyvern. Going to make them both Dark Dragons. Then we're going to activate Proxy F, make Borreload Furious. We do not have an extender to make Deplexer, but that's totally fine. We set the Signet Fusion as a bluff, because if they have back row removal, we really want to be able to have a shot at keeping our Crackdown. They're going to normal summon Rapid Chiyomaru. We are going to chain Effect Veiler. They should have activated this in the end phase, but our opponent doesn't know, folks. They're going to end turn, and because Rapid is a quick effect, I do not want them to get it on their turn. We're going to steal it with Crackdown. We draw Lance, change Rapid Chiyomaru to defense position, and get in for 3,000 damage. They're going to normal summon Rapid Chiyomaru, activate the effect. We're not going to let that go through. We're going to pop both Chiyomarus on each side of the field, and they're going to pass, and we'll just kill them with Warlord Furious Dragon. How interesting. Okay, folks, here's going to be a really funny replay. Going second against a zone on Time Lords, or Z1 if you prefer, and you're going to learn something incredibly funny about this deck, and that is perhaps why you would play Cosmic Cyclone instead of Lance. They are going to activate the skill Empty Machine. Time Maiden is, of course, negated. They just want to get it off their field. They're going to activate Empty Machine, set 2 cards, and pass. We cannot do anything because we cannot shuffle our fusions back into the deck because we have no fusions to add. And we draw Degrade Buster, which doesn't do anything. They're going to activate Infinite Machine and Infinite Light. Did you know this deck has no out to a resolved Infinite Light, and we have now lost the game? They're going to summon 2 Time Lords here, activate Zaphion, activate Camion, activate Time Maiden. Then they're going to get in for 1, 2, 3 attacks worth of 0 fucking damage. Shuffle back our back row, which is all we needed to turn our skill online. Not that it matters because we do not have an out to this card. We're going to activate the Fusion Clockup. Link Slayer cannot destroy Infinite Light. We're going to summon the Clock Wyvern after the Link Slayer. We're going to just spin our wheels here. We've already lost the game. There's nothing we can do, so let's just speed up. This is why I think you might want to play a copy of Lance. Even though Lance is better 9 times out of 10, Lance doesn't save you from the fucking Infinite Light deck. That's incredibly funny. We were just 1 turn too late to make anything happen, and we'll just scoop them up and let our opponent win. Since I've been sitting on these replays for a while, we'll be showcasing a match against pre-nerf BLS so we can all appreciate never having to duel this deck again, and instead play a deck that's basically exactly the same in Neos Ubel. The more things change, the more they stay the same after all. We're going to activate our skill. Stop me if you've seen this before. Add the same 2 cards to our hand, and I'm going to fall asleep and let the game play itself for the rest of the turn. Holy shit, we've actually summoned an extender. How exciting. We can't link it off to play around DD Crow, though, because the skill doesn't let us actually play our deck. We're going to activate Fusion Clockup, turning our backup secretary into a dragon. This time, how interesting, it's not the Clock Wyvern this time. We're going to make the Borreload Furious Dragon, then we will banish the backup secretary to summon Degrade Buster, then we will Signet Fusion into the Deplexer Chimera, which we will pop with the Borreload Furious to add Fusion and Wyvern back to our hand. They're going to summon Endymion, the Blackluster Soldier of Blasting Blasters. We're going to have to pop that with the copy of Borreload Furious. Just another reason why they put these cards to 3 and 1 respectively. Really frustrating. They didn't realize the actual problem was the skill, and they had to nerf these incredibly mid cards. We're going to Degrade Buster, getting that card off the field. And since you don't have to control a Blackluster Soldier to activate the skill, they're just going to +1 anyway. Aren't you happy that the least important part of the card game you're playing is the cards that you are playing? They're going to activate the effect of BLS. We're going to return their BLS. They've set 3 cards and pass. Luckily, we can play through any one piece of interaction with this hand, so we're going to have to hit a real card, and we missed the 60-60, or we missed the 33% chance to hit the shit card, and as a result, we lose the game, not to Blackluster Soldier, but to the 2 warning points they got to hard draw. Because the skill lets them play such a small amount of their dedicated engine, they can play a critical mass of cards that win them the game. Final showcase of the video here, going to be up against a Jim Cook on Live Twin. This is going to be a highly represented deck post ban list implementation, so it's probably important to show it off. We've opened Effect Veiler, which means we've functionally drawn all 5 pieces of Exodia. We're going to Veiler their normal summon, and let's see what else they can do. How incredibly interesting. We're going to activate Fusion Clockup, returning our extra Link Slayer for our full combo. Then we're going to special summon Link Slayer, activate its effect, pitching Backup Secretary to pop the MST. They couldn't do anything to us anyway. And from now, we basically won the game. So let's finally showcase how we're going to get to Clock Dragon here. We're going to link off for Proxy F Magician, same as before. Activate Stack Reviver targeting the Wyvern. Activate Fuck-Ass Clockup to make our monsters into Dark Dragons. Then we're going to fuse for Cyber's Clock Dragon. No reason to activate the second part of the skill, but I didn't decide to do Clock Dragon OTK until after I activated that part of the skill because I'd won the game anyway. Then we're going to make Clock Lizard. Clock Lizard will tribute itself to target the Cyber's Clock Dragon. Then we will fuse Wyvern, Decode, Proxy F, and the Lizard for a Cyber's Clock Dragon with a fuck ton of attack, 9,500. Banish a Light and a Dark for Blackluster Soldier, Buster, Degrade Blaster Man, and kill him into the sun. So we're back with the deck, and despite not being one of the more impressive decks of the format, I think Fusion Clockup is probably the second or first most disgusting skill they've ever released in this game, and it's shocking that the cards are so mediocre that a skill this pushed is not able to carry this deck into Tier 1 contention. It is incredibly boring to play because you don't play it. You follow the instruction manuals outlined in the yellow button, and the best cards in your deck are still, as always, the Effect Veiler that wins the game on its own, the DD Crow that wins the game on its own, the fucking Crackdown that wins the game on its own, and the Lance that's just kind of vibing here. How's it going? I think the deck should be very cool because I really like combo decks, and this is, on the surface, a very cool combo deck insofar as ending on Borreload Furious Dragon plus Deplexer Chimera to plus you off the Borreload Furious Dragon is really cool, but you don't make that end board yourself. The deck just lets you do it. It hands it to you. You don't earn it. You don't learn it. You don't play it. The deck truly does play itself. All in all, as a deck in its own right, it's pretty mediocre, incredibly explosive when it does work, but of course is easily interruptible since, like most decks this format, it does lose to a single copy of DD Crow, and as a result, I can't fully recommend it over other skill-carried decks that exist in the format. However, as a case study in the kinds of design philosophy that's ruining Duel Links and pushing players to get into Master Duel instead of this game, I think it's an excellent example and perhaps the best in the game. So that's that. Thank you all so much for watching until the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed it, or at the very least found it informative. I'm sorry if I came off a little negative in the final portions of this video, but I really do find it unfortunate that the skill design in Duel Links is pushing card quality further and further out of relevance as decks continue to age in this game. Hopefully in the future I can showcase more decks that win and lose based on the quality of the cards and engines that they're playing, rather than the yellow button that they're clicking at the start of every turn. I will see you in the next video, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.